Hello everybody, welcome to the Talent Parent Programme Goal Setting webinar. Thank you for accessing this webinar this evening. Hopefully you'll be able to hear myself, and as we progress through this webinar you should be able to see the presentation too. So for those of you who have not accessed the webinar before, during the webinar please can you ensure that you have yourself muted and that your camera is turned off during the presentation. So there should be a red mic button at the top of your screen to enable this. For those of you who are listening through a phone, please ensure that you have yourself muted as well. So my name's Daniel Thompson and I'm the Talent Programme Administration Officer for British Canoeing. So my primary role is managing the day-to-day administration and operational delivery of our England Talent Programme. So presenting remotely to yourself this evening is Emma Hooton, who is a volunteer psychologist for the England Talent Programme. So I'd like to start by thanking you all for accessing this webinar today. This is the fifth and final webinar that's been delivered in 2018 as part of the Talent Parent Programme. I hope that you've been able to access the previous 4 webinars. If you haven't had a chance to watch these, then these have been uploaded onto the Talent Parent Programme webpage on the video and resources tab. So this webinar, along with additional resources around this topic area, will be uploaded onto the Talent Parent Programme webpage sometime next week. So today, Emma will be presenting the goal setting web presentation. So without further ado, I will pass you over to Emma.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. Hopefully you can all see the screen. My name is Emma and I'll be delivering the goal setting website, delivering the goal setting presentation today. So thank you for listening in. Today's session will be covering why should we have goals, then moving swiftly on to what are SMART goals, different types of goals that we can set, touching upon the 4-corner approach, and then finally looking at tracking and reviewing goals to make sure that they're as most effective as possible. So I'm going to kickstart by, like I said, explaining why we should have goals. They're kind of a little bit of information behind that. I'm sure you're all really aware in your day-to-day lives as athlete parents of your own goals and your children's goals. But goal setting is one of the most important skills that can be kind of taught to an athlete in order to help them achieve their optimal performance. And it really helps athletes understand where they are currently and also where they'd like to go. Larson and Engel 2013 actually say that goal setting is one of the most common kind of psychological strategies that is taught, and it is known to enhance performance levels of all areas. The main aim of goal setting focuses on kind of increasing individuals' motivational levels to achieve success by directing attention and applying energy levels into achieving their overall goal. To reach overall goals, there is kind of proposed 2 different kind of theories and methods, which I won't go into too much detail today, but can kind of upload some additional resources. But the 2 theories regarding the goal setting theory and the action plan theory. Goal setting theory explains the theory behind specifically goal setting, why it is important, and what you can achieve by setting goals. The action plan theory describes setting a designated plan for individuals in order to meet all short-term and long-term goals that are set out. When a goal is designated and assigned to an individual, which may be the case in some cases, but doesn't seem achievable, it obviously can possibly affect the mindset, which is something you would have covered in the last webinar. And then alongside that can kind of affect confidence levels. And so it is vital to remember that with every athlete, there is a difference, and the situations that differ and react to different situations differently. And so having individual goals for each athlete rather than a set precedent for a whole kind of squad is really, really important. So many of you would have seen this acronym before, but the current research does show that using the acronym SMART goals is an effective way to use goal setting as a technique. The acronym broken down obviously stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time. And it basically breaks down the aspects to achieving a goal in all areas to focus an individual and to make sure that it's effective. So I'm going to quickly kind of go through what is a SMART goal so you just understand it a little bit more and kayak specific. So for that S, that specific goal, that's looking at something in a little bit more depth. So for a sprint paddler, it might be that they want to make it through to an A final at every regatta, or a slalom paddler aims to execute a specific move on a challenging upstream gate. So making it really specific and to the point. Measurable means that there can be some measure put against it, possibly something that we can have some control over, and sometimes we can't have complete control over that. But for those examples, again, that could be position gained and the number of moves that are executed, that we can kind of tally up, that we measurably know that we're achieving that goal, rather than saying, I just want to be the best. We need some measure that we can kind of measure against. Achievable is assuring that the goal that is set for the athlete is achievable, and making sure that those small tasks which are achievable along the way to help gain confidence and start to work towards larger goals. So it's all about, you know, not moving from A to B or A to Z too quickly, that we have the steps along the way. And I'm going to talk next slide about something that really enables us to set those realistic kind of goals. Realistic as the next one, so this is key and very important, and to discuss with individual athletes. As I've mentioned, athletes are all different, and their various strengths and weaknesses in the different areas mean that that's how goals can obviously differ, and we'll need to decide upon those. So it's very much up to, you know, led by an athlete to decide what do they see as realistic, but also giving some accountability to coaches, to yourselves as parents and guardians on what is realistic, and kind of managing those expectations as such. And then our last bit is time. Now, goals should have a time period that needs to be achieved by, so we know when actually are we on track, are we off track, and this usually is maybe part of a season, but having a smaller time frame gives you the specific to an athlete, can give those short wins and can kind of just maintain motivation. So having something that is set every month, and maybe even every week, that is achievable, and again we'll touch on that upon a little bit more in the next slide. It's important that goal setting for athletes involves that kind of communal process, and that you need to be involved in that opinion to make it interesting and effective, not only for the athlete, for the coaches, for support staff, and for parents and carers. So it's just remembering this whole process should be communal and should be a really nice communication channel on what is this SMART goal. So moving swiftly on to types of goals. Now, in front of me, we have outcome goals, performance goals, and process goals. And this is where we kind of split up that more stereotypical short-term goals and long-term goals into a little bit more detail. So we'll start with kind of outcome goals. So this is the result, the end, the singular goal that your athlete is working towards. So this could be related to winning or losing, a specific result of a competition. And again, differs from this kind of performance and process goals. An outcome goal, for example, might be to finish top 3 in an age group in a 500-meter K1. That is their long-term goal. So it might be kind of at the end of the season. It might be a collective after kind of a year's hard work. And that is the outcome that we're working towards. Having these big goals allows an athlete to kind of know exactly where they're heading, because underneath that we have the kind of performance and process goals, which are what day to day, month to month, and maybe even year to year keeps us going. So a performance goal is the performance levels that are needed to be able to achieve, to reach that outcome goal. And so I'll swiftly go on to the next slide and flip back, but this very much sits within what are the performance levels that are required under this 4-corner approach. So technically, psychologically, physically, and maybe socially, that is needed to achieve those goals. So this could be, for example, what are the performance standards that are required to achieve that main target for the year. So to finish, say, top 3 in age group 500-meter K1, the technical, kind of physical, might be to be able to paddle 500 meters in under 2 minutes 10. So physically need to be able to do that. Our technical goal might be to maintain a set cadence. Their psychological goal, performance goal, maybe to record training and plan ahead. And that kind of social lifestyle related performance goal might be to refuel effectively after training. All of these performance goals together work towards that outcome goal. And as you can see, there's this kind of recording training, maintaining a set cadence, things that can be done over a period of time working up to that outcome goal. So we can start to see the differences, maintain that motivation, that confidence in the fact that even if 1 or 2 training sessions, competitions don't go quite right, we've got these performance goals that are keeping us on track towards that outcome goal that we've got. Underneath that, we have our process goals, which relates to our performance goals and is what the athlete should be focusing on while performing a sports skill. So, for example, what training would we need to do to result in those performance standards? So again, with that previous example, flip back to our process goal. To be able to paddle 500 meters in, say, under 2 minutes 10, we need 2 endurance sessions per week to monitor sessions every 3 weeks. So that, that is the training that was required to meet that standard. For example, to maintain a set cadence, we also would have a similar kind of process goal, something that is put in place to achieve the set cadence that you're trying to achieve as a performance goal. To record training and plan ahead, that may be as simple as kind of making sure to keep a training log. This is the training, this is what is necessary to achieve that performance goal. And last but not least, our lifestyle related performance goal, to refuel effectively after training. So that may be that what is necessary is to take on, for example, more protein. So take on some chocolate milk and a snack every time, refuel after an intense session. So together we can see that day to day, we are looking at those process goals, the actual training that is necessary to reach those outcome goals, which is our performance related goals. So to reach that kind of time, to set that cadence, to make sure that we've kept a training plan and to refuel effectively after training, that then in turn leads us to that outcome goal. And what's really good about this is you can reflect upon these bit by bit. So it might be that process goals slightly get changed throughout the season, throughout the year, because they need to affect the performance goal differently. And again, in turn, performance goals might be altered, but still looking for that long-term outcome goal, because we would have hopefully set it against a SMART goal. Our outcome goal should be set first and foremost smartly, so then it can meet the expectations done through performance and process goals. Now, tracking goals obviously is really important. So I'll go through a few ways in which we can do that, and that I've spoken to various athletes about before. So tracking, keeping track of our goals throughout the year, throughout the weeks, is really important, because we want to see what changes are being made, but also reminding ourselves of what we're trying to achieve. Trying to get out on the water at 7 a.m. in the morning when it's freezing cold in the winter, having some kind of reminder about what is that outcome goal we're trying to achieve, and what am I putting in place to make sure today that makes a difference, is really important. So these are a few different ways that I found to be really effective to track different goals. So I've got a picture of a water bottle there. So what we find is obviously if a goal is related to nutrition and kind of taking on kind of fluids, it could be as simple as writing on a water bottle, right, 100 milliliters, 200 milliliters, 300 milliliters of the bottle, to remind ourselves, right, okay, my goal is to take on more kind of to keep hydrated throughout the day. And so I'm going to physically track that through knowing, right, okay, I've drank 200 milliliters already today, I need to get down to 500, and I need to refill my bottle again. Also, something that we hope that athletes are taking to every session is a water bottle. So having it as simply scrawled all over a water bottle, that goal of what they're trying to achieve. So every time they take that hydration and water break, they're reminded of why they're doing what they're doing. Kind of ups their confidence, ups their kind of motivation for whatever they're doing on the water or in a kind of off-water session. Phones, I find, we just have to accept that technology is here and is very, very big with kind of younger athletes, and so we need to utilize those to our best. So there is 2 different ways in which you can use technology. It could be as simple as the background screen of an athlete's phone or iPad or computer to represent their goal, to represent what they're aiming for. So if it is something quite typical. So if it's them standing on top of a podium, that's where they want to get back to. That's what they want to do. That's what their goal is. Maybe the athlete they aspire to become or to be, or it could be a little bit more abstract and could just be a picture of fruit, because actually their goal, their kind of process goal, is very much related to kind of nutrition. Having that reminder on something that unfortunately we use throughout the day quite a lot, again, just gives those little reminders of what we're trying to aim towards. Also, it's worth looking on app stores at different ways to kind of track goals. There's very different apps which I can kind of we can put online afterwards, but really good tracking devices that are put together for this very purpose. Another way, of course, is we've tried it before with athletes, is actually having motivational mottos or slogans or keywords that really draw out what that goal is about, placed upon the boat. You know, the equipment that they're using to hopefully achieve this goal of theirs. So it can be as simple as, you know, strong, or happy, or believe, something that means something to that athlete and really relates to their goal, and again is going to keep them and just remind them quickly of what they're doing. And then last but not least is just the use of good old post-it notes and just having it around the house, the bedroom, the area in which they train, is again a reminder of what they're trying to look for. So, and again, what I really like about post-it notes is if we have them posted around, they can be changed. They have that kind of reflecting element. You can kind of take one down, pop another one up, and really see the full kind of process that we've looked at, which is process to performance to outcome goal. So really like the use of something as simple as post-it notes to really keep track of where we're trying to get to. And again, that could be using different colors for different kind of goals and how they're processing, and really up to the kind of athletes, and make kind of that ownership element, I think, in some of these tracking ways is what's best. Reviewing goals. So what I think is most important to remember when we are goal setting is that we're not trying to set a goal and this is it, and this is the end, this is the be end and end all, and when we kind of keep going at it, even if we started off with a smart goal and actually over time it seems this isn't realistic anymore, conditions happen, things kind of crop up, this isn't a smart goal. And so it really is important not only to review a goal after maybe we've achieved it, so there's that process and that kind of outcome and performance goals, but also to review it as we're going along. The first bit I've got is I've got this cat looking into a mirror and seeing the lion, and what that represents is this idea of reframing how we look at that goal, making sure that the goal is not something that has a negative connotation and it's about being positive. So if, for example, the goal is I want to be there, I want to come in the podium position because I want to beat so and so, I want to be the best, I want to feel better about myself, has a slightly negative connotation compared to, you know, I want to be podium position because of more positive things, because it gives me the confidence, I feel really optimistic, it allows me to then see how I've progressed as an athlete over the year. So it's really important to kind of reframe how we kind of have these goals, and are we trying to aim for something that is, like I said, going to get you out of bed at 7 a.m. in the morning to get on the water or into the gym. The next one along is that kind of reflecting. So that what, that so what, that now what. And that's very much around reflecting, like I said, throughout the process, but also reflecting at the end. So the what, the so what, and the now what is so what have I done? So what does that mean? And so now what? And I think that reflection is a really powerful tool, and especially with goals, something that we should keep track of kind of month by month. So just if it's and at the end of a training weekend at HPP or at Lee Valley, just trying to get into a nice kind of routine of saying, so what did you learn this weekend? So what does that mean for you going forwards, your performance? And now what are you going to do with that information? And again, that reflection can be positive and negative to allow us to kind of grow. Our next one down in the right hand corner is that kind of making sure that we have some appreciation that this isn't just all on the athletes, that there is good communication between athletes and coaches and parents. This can be done, obviously, like I've said, through those conversations in the car, after training, day to day, before a training session. Coaches can get involved. And making sure that there is this shared aspect of what they're expecting, because when somebody else knows about your goal, you start to feel a little bit more pressure on, right, okay, this is real. I've told someone else. This is something that I actually am trying to achieve, rather than trying to keep it themselves. So I really would encourage that sharing aspect of what are the goals that your athlete is trying to achieve. And last but not least is just understanding, and it's just accepting that sometimes the goals we set, and through these different processes we can understand why, but understanding, right, okay, actually this is, and we all spoke about this last time with the kind of the mindset, is understanding, right, okay, this has been a failed goal as such, and what does that mean, and using that reflection as a tool to find out, well, why. But I think it is really important to let kind of athletes know, we would have spoke about that with a growth and fixed mindset, is it's okay if we set this goal and we haven't achieved it. But I think learning to be able to reflect and look back, okay, was it because I didn't set efficient and smart process and performance goals? Was it actually that I didn't actually achieve some of those process and performance goals, and that's why I haven't been able to kind of step up and achieve my outcome goal? But I think that this kind of failing, is kind of going forwards and learning to be able to take something from a failure is really, really important in terms of goal setting. It's not like every single goal we set we're going to be able to achieve straight away. We sometimes have to go back to the drawing board and look at where our next goals should be to make it realistic, to make it smart. That's all from me. Thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions.
Just waiting for any questions. Just have one question for Emma. So Emma, what advice would you give to a parent who has a child who set a challenging but achievable goal of qualifying onto a junior team? So that happens to be at one of the early regatta races of the season, but unfortunately doesn't make it. How do I remotivate my child to set that new goal?
Yeah, so yeah, really important. And like I said, it unfortunately does obviously occur that we set goals that we have less control over than we'd like. So kind of being able to qualify does depend on other athletes and how they're performing. It's not something that you could have maintained your performance goals, your process goals, and still not kind of gain the outcome goal because of that control aspect of other people. So what I would definitely look to have the athlete understand is where those kind of process and performance goals, have they been smart? Have they been realistic and achievable along the way? So it might have been a realistic kind of outcome goal, but because actually there has been a little bit of lacking keeping to the goals of performance and process, that's why we haven't been able to quite deliver on that outcome goal. If it is the case that the performance and kind of process goals have been, kept, and they should have led to this kind of outcome goal delivery, again, that kind of depending on the outcome of a race that you don't have as much control over in terms of how other people are performing, is using reflection as a tool there to understand, right, okay, what was it? And to be able to then kind of take the blame off themselves. Actually, you know what, I did keep to that performance goal. I did keep to that process goal. And it was because of the conditions. It was because of this other athlete kind of coming out of the woodworks and being able to kind of gain a place that I would strive for. And then that will kind of keep the motivation, the confidence up to think, actually, I still can go forward and achieve this in the future. I hope that's some help.
Yeah, thank you there. So I don't think we've had any questions come through on chat. So just to summarise what we've Emma's talked about today. So we talked about goal setting, why it's important to set goals, increasing motivation, optimising performance levels. We talked about SMART goals. They're being specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based. Talked about the different type of goals, outcome, performance, and process, where you can go into a bit more detail relating to your short-term and long-term goals. The use of the four-corner model to assist in performance and thus outcome goals, and how to track goals as well. We just had one question that's come through. So it says, is it worth setting goals for every session or just larger goals?
Yeah, so I'd say that those goals that are related to every session would be that kind of process goals and the performance goals. So as I kind of mentioned, for example, a process, a performance goal might be to refuel effectively after an intense training session. So as such, that is a goal that could be related to a majority of training sessions. So I've said that because that could be something as simple as making sure we're taking on a banana. Effectively refueling effectively could be related to, actually, it's usually quite a sugary drink that's taken on. So right, let's try and maybe have something that's got high proteins, take on a chocolate milk after an intense training session to make sure that recovery process is aided. So that's where those setting goals should come from for every session, and in turn understanding, right, how does this aid my outcome goal? And then in turn, that's right, okay, if I can recover better, I'm going to then perform better at my next training session. And in turn, that will enable me to meet maybe those times that I'm trying to get, and in turn, that gives me that kind of outcome goal of, right, I want to get a podium position. So it's very much related to what the athlete is trying to achieve, but I'd say that there definitely is goals that should be the kind of basis of every training session that they're trying to achieve.
Thank you. We had another question here. Do the coaches set goals at training sessions?
Yeah, so from my experience, I'd say that very much differs coach to coach on how they do that. But I know for certain that every coach will want and need to understand exactly where their athletes are at, to both understand, well, what is that athlete trying to achieve, to make sure they're on the right track, but also make sure that they understand that they're aiming their sights high enough and realistically enough. So it's not, they're not setting their sights too high or too low. So I'd say that yes, coaches do set those goals, and something we do talk about when we talk with athletes directly in kind of workshops, and I have done, is that this is a communal, like I said, process, and so shouldn't be necessarily always coaches kind of saying this is your goal. It should involve a two-way conversation with that athlete. Depending on age, obviously, there needs to be a bit more kind of leading with a kind of younger kind of athlete. But once we kind of get to adolescence and kind of young adults, that goal really should be coming from the athlete and then kind of spoken about with support staff and coaches and yourself as parents and guardians to understand and support.
Yeah, thank you for that there.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for presenting the goal setting webinar today, Emma. And thank you for those who have listened in and accessed this webinar this evening. So there will be a feedback form coming out after this webinar. So appreciate if you spend a couple of minutes to be able to complete that feedback form, and it will help us to improve future webinars going forward. As we mentioned at the beginning of this webinar will get uploaded onto the Talent Parent webpage next week, along with additional resources that were mentioned today during this webinar and around this topic area of goal setting. So thank you all for accessing this webinar this evening, and a big thank you to Emma for delivering this webinar as well.
Thank you.